Welcome to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict, and I want to thank each of you for joining us today. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Professor Bill Griffiths. How are you, Professor?
I am doing very well, and I appreciate your invitation to join you.
Absolutely. Now, Bill is an associate professor of chemistry and forensic science at St. John's University in New York, right?
That is correct.
I was just looking at the photos of the university before we jumped on together here, and it's a beautiful campus.
Yes, it is. They have several different ones, and that is the main one that I have dealt with. There's also one in Staten Island, New York, which I have dealt with, where I've done the forensic science.
Excellent. And I want to just thank you for joining us today. I know you're in a busy schedule. The fall is underway. But tell me, as a professor, how is this year uniquely different?
I don't know if we have that much time, but quite frankly, the obvious, which is that we are all online as opposed to just, the common idea of on-site as well as online, which was usually the minimum. That has changed dramatically. We still do some on-site and hybrid, but it is very, very limited. And it looks, although this isn't official, it looks very much like going to continue.
Oh my. So you've been teaching for how long?
Oh, goodness me. It's almost a danger to say this. 52 years.
52 years. So what have you how have you approached your classes now, and how is that different in your whole approach to teaching?
Well, if we are just considering 2020, the global pandemic has turned everything upside down for everyone. While I had a great deal of experience teaching both online as well as on site, they're two different situations completely, and you just simply can't pick up what you've done on site and say, here, this is what I want you to do on an online basis. It has to be crafted in a completely different way. Obviously, that can be a challenge, a major challenge for some people. So that would be the short answer.
So talk to me about how you perceive higher education in general as a sector, as a space. How is the pandemic impacting them? What are the major impacts?
Well, there are many factors to be considered, one of which is, what are we doing to aid and engage the students, regardless of what we're doing, whether it's online, on-site, hybrid? The other factor that we have to consider is that colleges, universities are still a business. Mm-hmm. And that has to have a great deal of introspection on the part of anybody in any institution. I don't officially speak for anyone, but in speaking with colleagues, most definitely there are concerns. Over the years, many colleges and universities have invested heavily in brick and mortar situations, and many of the residuals that they have received from alumni and alumnae have depended upon the wonderful memories that they have had. That could be in jeopardy at this point. That's a big factor.
So if you would, it sounds like the business model itself might be in jeopardy.
I think that there has to be a very strong look at the current business model. And everybody is unfortunately playing catch up. Mm-hmm. Because nobody anticipated, even with last semester that we went on to an online situation in many colleges, no one anticipated what the ultimate outcome was going to be. We haven't, I don't believe, even seen that yet.
So Bill, do you see parallels between what may happen in higher education and what happened in the retail space, where you had retailers that were very good at going online and being able to create a whole new business model online, maybe even like the Amazons out there, and what might happen in the future to universities?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have constantly talked about this in the schools that I am associated with, and as I said, with colleagues that I have in other institutions, definitely we have to consider, we look and see what has happened in other business sectors. We don't want to always consider ourselves just a business, but we are in the business of educating individuals and making certain that they feel comfortable and confident. We want them to walk away feeling as though this has been accomplished in a meaningful fashion. You see all these small businesses that are having a great deal of difficulty surviving. Some of the big ones are in a similar situation. People never thought certain places would ever go out of business.
Mhm.
I really don't see any of the educational institutions going out of business. But I think that they are going to look very closely at a number of factors: how they deliver their material, what expenses are involved, as well as what do we do to help our students.
Let's talk about that. How has the experience of attending a university changed this year for students? And, what can universities do about that?
It's a very, very crucial question to be asked. And basically, when you consider many individuals who have had the traditional experience, they love going to all of the social parties and everything that go on, and living in a dorm setting, those are still potentially available. However, they're in a diminished amount. The experience is definitely distinctly different than what it has been. I know from discussions that I have had, colleges are looking very closely at what are we doing to engage the students and make their experience at least as meaningful as we used to do. And how is that going on in terms of interaction from student to student, from professors to students? The administrations of schools have really been working overtime trying to address this issue.
So a lot of people who haven't been exposed to kind of behind the curtains at universities may not be aware of all the kind of IT infrastructure that's necessary for running a university, for communicating with students, with creating that kind of social interaction, with providing course material and content, with authenticating testing and all kinds of different things. What have you seen from your own personal experience over the last 10 years? How has IT changed the way universities operate?
It has changed, as you indicated, a tremendous amount. There's been more input from faculty and students about the needs that they wanted to be able to deal with things in the university or college setting, at least as much as what they were familiar with outside. We have all, across the board, whether it's in the colleges or outside, have become more dependent upon internet and other technical situations, smartphones, et cetera. So colleges that are doing okay are the ones which early on, within that decade, let's say, have chosen to follow that, not as a fad, but as a genuine characteristic change in education, and see how they could explore the other dimensions of that educational perspective. I have seen more and more the use of email, Zoom meetings, and other proprietary ones like WebEx.
Yeah.
There have been a phenomenal amount of money, I will say, and although I don't take responsible for that, but I have seen the effects of money that has had to be put in to upgrade systems across the board. Now, some colleges are on a much tighter budget, despite their desire to do so. They can't implement some of the things, such as having a voice thread or a Panopta PowerPoint voiceover situation.
Right.
It sounds so simple, and in some ways there are workarounds, but in some institutions they're on a bare bones budget. I've seen it. I haven't had that my concern myself, but I have seen it, and it does impact the students because they look for more, and that is the key. That they
Oh yeah,
want.
I mean, it's one of those things where if we're used to using consumer devices, we then take those same level of user experiences, expectations for user experiences. We take those from the consumer industry into our work and then into our universities as well. We're wanting that same kind of experience. And sometimes it's, we have to scramble to actually support those. How did you guys have to, what had to change in 2020 very quickly at your university to kind of adapt to the pandemic environment?
Well, we did have a good infrastructure already in existence. I will say that in terms of our ability to be online.
Yeah.
Every one of the courses that a professor had an associated LMS, which is the learning management system. We had been using a particular one, Blackboard, which has been around for quite some time. We are switching over to one that's called Canvas in one of the colleges I'm associated with. And again, that had been available to us, as well as all of the bells and whistles, if you wish, that go along with that have been phenomenal and that have helped the educational experience. We have also seen more and more in-service training, which had been suggested is now mandatory, because we don't want people making mistakes. We don't want them to worry in terms of how they deliver their course. I mean, you can do it by a meeting such as what we're involved in. Yeah. But in some instances, how do you take care of, let's just say a large class of 80 to 90 and make certain that everyone is paying attention, if you wish? Do you really want to be what is commonly called in the news industry a talking head? Yeah. Will a person pay attention to that? You alluded to the security in terms of testing and so on. There are a number of options out there that have been involved. And so far, they have been somewhat successful. It depends upon, there's a statement that if you build a good mousetrap, the mouse will find a way out. And so consequently, it is somewhat like that. Yes. In that respect. But I have to say, some colleges that I have seen are faltering and having major difficulties because they don't have the budget, as I indicated, and they have a great deal of difficulty making certain that the individuals who advise them in the technology area. Right. You also mentioned about the business that we get used to using smartphones, et cetera. Yeah. Well, one of the functions of education is to prepare these individuals to go out into a business of some sort, one way or the other. So we need to mirror what is going on within the society in general and business in particular.
Wow. So we talked about kind of a 10-year trajectory of digital transformation and upgrades in the technology infrastructure of universities. How do you think the pandemic will perhaps change that trajectory? Will it accelerate it? Will it slow? Will the recession post-pandemic slow things down? I mean, how do you see the trajectory of digital transformation inside higher education changing after this?
Well, it has already changed. I have to tell you that, because there is a need for it to have changed. So I will say that the trajectory has increased phenomenally. Okay. And the question is, how far will we go with that? What the direction will be is still something I think many, many institutions are closely looking at. And that's very important for them to make sure that what they put in isn't just a Band-Aid approach right now, that it is meaningful, that it has value within the next, let's say 1 to 2 semesters. You could ordinarily say, let's plan for a year from now. Let's plan for a year and a half, 2 years from now. No, now we have to plan for a few months from now.
Oh my. So talk to me, universities used to, in a large degree, be associated with a geography. We're in the Boston area, we're in the New York area, that kind of thing, and you attract a great deal of your student body from that vicinity. How might this kind of rush and requirement to go online change those geographic limitations?
Well, there are no real limitations. That's one of the definite positives, not the only one, but one of the most obvious ones from the use of the internet, among other things. I have students who are in foreign countries that obviously are in different time zones. So I have to adjust my assignments and expectations in terms of the amount of time they have for doing something accordingly. But what it does is it allows a broader and more diverse engagement of the populations throughout the world. We have always had campuses in some of the institutions in other countries, and that's been a phenomenal experience. We hope to redo that soon.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you can have an educational experience using the technology that we have now. And I see that as a way of driving some of the technological improvements that will be coming down the road.
Mm. So universities compete for talented students globally. How might, this change to a digital environment change kind of the competitive landscape as well?
Well, I think that's something which all colleges and universities have to look at very closely. What is it that they offer the candidates who wish to come to college that the other people don't? Or if they offer something similar, how is ours better? And in what way? What more? Do we have to do a service that we didn't think we needed to before?
Yeah.
We used to say, well, we have to have some way of assessing that a student is okay to go on an online course.
Right.
Well, now everyone is on an online course.
Yeah.
Do we look closer at the emotional impact of that? What resources are we just giving? What are we providing? That's where we will say one school will be the one that certain parts of the university's population will look at more than another.
Interesting. I've been to a lot of university campuses in my years, and often they're very, very beautiful places to be. Park-like settings with, very grand brick buildings and columns. And, it's impressive and inspiring to a lot of us. And suddenly you're needing to take that experience and transfer it to a digital environment. And it becomes all about this digital experience for your clients. Talk to me about your thoughts there.
Well, again, I mean, there are still some online on-site courses as well as hybrid courses, which will continue. Let's play the game of fantasy of down the road, we won't have to worry as much about COVID.
Yep.
What will occur? Will there be semi-permanent changes in the way we provide a college experience? Yes, I feel strongly there will be. I think that the mention of broadening the diversity of educational experience out there will stay. It will be let's say a very, very enticing thing for colleges to consider.
Yes.
The brick and mortar situation, the buildings, et cetera, they will stay.
Yeah.
Seriously, that you now have the idea that might very well move the technological sector to look into how do we make the experience of a virtual educational setting more realistic.
Yeah.
All right, there are loads of things out there that people have looked into. I think that we're going to see more of that type of thing. I mean, we still do videos to present different colleges.
Yeah.
What more can we do?
Yeah.
After that, what kind of engagement can you suggest between people using the technology to get a sense of the experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot that can be done around a more virtualized environment with your students all around you. Right. And the teacher, again, in front of the room, but in a virtual environment. And you can raise your hand in the virtual environment. Yeah, I can just see all that.
Well, you can do it in a Zoom meeting, and you can also take a look at what is being done in the sports area where they have cutouts and so on. And I think that, there's a whole host of things that I'm not the perfect expert in, but what about holographs?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like science fiction, but it may not be. I think we're still in the working stage of some of that. You can't take away the fact that interpersonal relation, when you're dealing with one-to-one or in a group, is ever going to be translated exactly into another medium. That's the same mistake almost as saying, well, what I did in a class, all right, I'll just transport that into online. No, you have to rethink it
Yes.
and ask yourself, what is the bottom line that you really want to accomplish?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can think back one of my most influential moments when I was in university was going in and being so nervous and sitting down one-on-one with my professor. And, you know, just the being nervous in the office and wanting to do a good job, wanting to make a good impression. Yet that whole experience, it was because you were face to face with your professor.
Well, we do have office hours
Yeah.
in a way now.
Yeah.
And realistically, I think I have been able to detect a little bit of that. I have a number
Yes.
of first-year students. And even if it isn't physically in the same room as my office was, I am seeing them worried about what they think I am getting as a
Yeah.
perception. But at least in that case, the talking head is okay.
Yes.
You do see a little limited body language at that point.
Yeah.
Not quite the same as you might have experienced or that I have experienced many, many years ago, but
So,
it is still there a bit.
so Professor, what's going to be some of the biggest challenges for universities going forward over the next 3 to 5 years?
Engagement, as I keep saying. We need to have a major thrust towards having the students feel as though they are a major part. They are the stakeholders within the educational
Yes.
process. And consequently, whatever we do, whether it's on site, online, and especially with the technology available, let's say we go back to a point in which we are going to be on site.
Yep.
Don't discount the technology we used. Maybe we need to implement that in a different way in an on-site setting. I think that we definitely have to keep the engagement going.
Interesting. Professor, I want to thank you so much for your insight, your experiences that you shared with us, and just your time today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.